The cake cutting ceremony was her dream. "You're going to be my wife, so just put up with it." "Excuse me? What are you talking about?" It was our wedding day. I was at a loss for words, stunned by my husband Eric's outrageous statement. "Wait a minute. The bride and groom are supposed to do the cake cutting, right? Why should I let someone else do it?" Victoria, Eric's childhood friend wearing an almost white dress, glares at me. "Ashley, this is your second marriage, isn't it? You're lucky to be wearing a wedding dress at your age, so you could at least let me do the cake cutting." At least the cake cutting. 3 seconds later, for some reason, the wedding venue staff all stood up at once, and one of them spoke up with a frightening expression. "We're terribly sorry, but we must ask you to leave." The guests are also giving Eric and Victoria cold looks. Emboldened by the atmosphere in the room, I glared at Eric and Victoria. I'm done dealing with people like this. I'm going to cut ties with them right here and now. My name is Ashley, and I'm 45 years old. After my husband passed away 10 years ago, I raised our daughter Lauren on my own. It was tough working and raising Lauren at the same time, but with my late husband's inheritance and help from those around me, Lauren successfully entered college 3 years ago. Since then, Eric from the same company had been actively pursuing me, and although I was hesitant, we started dating 2 years ago. Eric was very kind and treated Lauren well too. And half a year ago, Eric finally proposed to me. "I will make you happy. Please marry me." I had my doubts about remarrying, but with Lauren's encouragement, I decided to marry Eric this month. Eric's parents had already passed away, and the only relative living nearby now was his cousin and childhood friend, Victoria. As soon as I agreed to the marriage, the three of us decided to have dinner together. "She's a bit too close, but she's not a bad person. She's like a little sister to me. Please try to get along with her." "Okay. I'm looking forward to it." Lauren is supportive of my remarriage, and Eric is kind. I've been working hard every day to raise Lauren well, and I plan to continue doing my best for her sake. But maybe it's okay for me to pursue a little happiness for myself too. I was starting to think that way. I never imagined things would turn out like this. We decided to meet Victoria at a French restaurant in the neighborhood. When we arrived at the restaurant, Victoria was already seated at our reserved table. "Eric. Long time no see. How've you been?" 5 years younger than Eric and 10 years younger than me, Victoria looked vibrant, her stylish appearance brimming with confidence. "Wow, marrying your boss? I could never do that." It was an extremely rude thing to say, but I restrained myself from making a face. Disappointed that Eric didn't say anything to her, I greeted Victoria. "Nice to meet you." "I'm Ashley." "Nice to meet you too. I'm Victoria. I heard Eric was marrying his boss, so I imagined someone stuffy, but you're not really like that. You seem plain." It was clear she didn't mean that in a good way either. I just gave a wry smile and took my seat. Victoria, not paying any attention to me, started talking to Eric. "Well, thanks to Eric marrying his boss, we get to eat at such a fancy restaurant. I might never come here again, so I'm going to enjoy it to the fullest." I wonder if it's because I'm nervous that her every word sounds sarcastic to me. I sense a strange hostility in the way Victoria looks at me. "Pumpkin soup? Didn't Eric used to hate pumpkins?" "I've finally learned to eat them." "But you still don't like them, right? Should I eat it for you?" "You just want to eat it yourself." The two of them are having a lively conversation, while I'm left out. I'm supposed to be marrying Eric, but somehow I feel like an outsider and it's disheartening. "We used to go out to eat together in the past, but it was always cheap places. Not that I minded, since we had fun even at cheap restaurants." Neither of us had money back then. "But it seems like Eric has money now." Victoria's tone implied that Eric was marrying me for my money. Every time she talks about money, she looks at me. Her gaze is mocking me and feels hostile, which is frightening. Yet she has a smile on her face and talks to me in a cloyingly sweet voice, as if she's trying to cozy up to me. "In high school, I stayed over at Eric's house once. Since we're childhood friends, we had a lot of slumber parties and stuff like that, so it wasn't unusual. But that time, Eric got scared after watching a horror movie and couldn't sleep." "Hey, cut it out. When are you talking about?" That's embarrassing. I kept listening to stories about Eric's past that I didn't know about. The conversation, which should have been heartwarming, had a tension like walking on thin ice, and it was quite exhausting. I was doing my best just to keep a polite smile on my face, not saying anything witty, and just listening to Victoria and Eric's reminiscences the whole time. I was worried that Eric's wife might be some incredibly beautiful, wicked woman. I'm surprised she's just an ordinary person. She seems steady even after marriage, so that's a relief. Even when she says something like that with a condescending look, I can't even come up with a good retort. Perhaps pleased by my constant smiling, Victoria spoke to me in an even sweeter voice. You have a 20-year-old daughter, right? It must be hard raising her on your own. Ashley, you look like you've had a tough time. Do I? Yes, you do. Didn't you consider remarrying anyone besides Eric? The atmosphere feels like it's frozen. Eric frowns slightly as he looks at Victoria, but he doesn't seem to be about to say anything. Disappointed that he's not helping me, I choose my words carefully. Not really. I was preoccupied with my daughter, and I only started dating Eric because he asked me out. If it wasn't for that, I probably wouldn't have remarried even now. Victoria's face contorts. She doesn't seem to like my response, and looks like she's about to click her tongue. But she quickly changes it to an exaggerated fake smile. Huh. I guess you two are alike? Eric doesn't have any female friends besides me either, and he's not popular with women at all. She probably means to say that I'm also just not sought after by the opposite sex. After being constantly insulted throughout today's dinner, I no longer felt any irritation. Perhaps my emotions have gone numb from enduring too much. All that's left is a terrible sense of fatigue. I don't feel irritated, but in exchange, I barely remember the taste of the food either. After parting with Victoria, Eric was in high spirits. Victoria is like a little sister to me, so please try to get along with her. Does he not think anything of the conversation at today's dinner? Do I have to get along with someone who says such nasty things and looks down on me like that? It was the first event that made me anxious about marrying Eric. Perhaps realizing that I was having doubts about the marriage, Eric suggested that we have a wedding ceremony. Lauren aspires to be a lawyer, so there will be tuition fees to pay for years to come. There are various other things I want to prepare for as well, so I was reluctant to have a wedding. Initially, Eric was inclined to respect my wishes, but since the dinner the other day, he's been insisting on having a wedding ceremony. Since we're getting married, let's do it properly. I want my colleagues and friends to celebrate with us. Okay. Well, if you insist. Eric and I visited various wedding venues together. We considered options like having a members-only wedding or inviting only close relatives. However, Eric was unenthusiastic about a small-scale wedding. It's my first marriage, so I want to invite people from work and stuff. If he goes that far, I have no choice but to opt for a conventional wedding. Among the few candidates, we decided to proceed with preparations at a venue where we felt good about the staff. But this is where the real trouble began. Victoria was telling me that there's a balloon performance, right? How about we do that? Apparently, it's quite popular. If you want to do it, Eric, then sure. Suddenly, the name of a woman other than myself came up, and the staff looked surprised for a moment. But they quickly returned to a smile and presented a plan. If that's the case, we have a plan like this as well. As expected of professionals. I also listened to the staff's suggestions and put together a plan. Victoria said buffets are popular, didn't she? Is that so? And what was it? Oh, she said she dreams of having a candle service. It went on like this the whole time, with Victoria's name coming up whenever he expressed an opinion. Even the staff were exasperated by this, and some of them looked at me with pity. Oh, Victoria said. Hey, this is our wedding, isn't it? Do Victoria's opinions matter that much? After saying it for the umpteenth time, I finally raised my voice. Eric seemed surprised by my attitude, apparently not expecting it. Don't get so angry. I was just trying to make various suggestions because you didn't seem enthusiastic, Ashley. But they're not your opinions. It makes me worried about our future life together. He seemed scared of me getting irritated after all. Eric hurriedly darted his eyes around. I'm sorry. I didn't have anything else to refer to. I thought this might be what women dream of, so I didn't mean any harm. I'm not entirely satisfied, but I can't argue further in front of the wedding venue staff. So then, what kind of atmosphere are you hoping for, Ashley? Well, I'd like a wedding where the guests can enjoy themselves and celebrate with us. In that case, how about a flower shower performance? The guests will enjoy it too, and the whole venue will celebrate together, so it's been a popular choice for many years. Yes, a flower shower sounds lovely. The planner also made various other suggestions, like preparing the dress and the video to play at the wedding. They were considerate of me, who had gotten irritated, and tried to ensure I could enjoy the wedding. Honestly, the wedding venue staff were far more attentive to me than Eric, who kept insensitively talking about Victoria. Just as we somehow finished the arrangements, an event occurred that increased my fatigue even further. Oh, hello. I was in the neighborhood, so I dropped by your house. Incredibly, Victoria showed up at my house unannounced. Eric is currently living at my house. It's the house my late husband left for me and Lauren, but we started living together half a year ago when considering remarriage. Victoria must have heard the address of this house from Eric. When I glance at Eric, he welcomes Victoria in as if he doesn't mind at all. What the heck? You could at least contact us first. Sorry. I felt a bit of distrust towards Eric, who was acting as if it were his own home. Certainly, Eric lives here too, but it was originally my house. A friend suddenly shows up without any prior notice, and he doesn't even feel bad about it. This house is kinda different from Eric's taste. Well, it's not a new home, so I guess it can't be helped. Victoria, who barged into the house on her own, is already beginning to behave rudely. Why do I have to invite someone like this into my home? Ashley, I'm so jealous that you get to have a wedding twice in your life. I might not even get to do it once, so I'm envious. Sitting down on the living room sofa without permission, Victoria looked at me and laughed. I mentioned it at work too, and everyone was surprised. They said you're having a wedding for the second time. Her gaze was clearly mocking. Partly because I was tired, I found it difficult to even force a polite smile and just stayed silent. Victoria seems quite pleased to see me not arguing back, and she's in a much better mood than at the dinner the other day. Maybe you were tired? You're not young anymore, so don't push yourself too hard. If something happens right after getting married, I'd feel sorry for Eric. Hey, Victoria. Even Eric stops her, as her way of speaking is too terrible. However, he didn't raise his voice or scold her. I had thought Eric was a kind person until now, but maybe that was a misunderstanding. Ah, yes. Well then, I'm looking forward to the wedding. With a storm-like commotion, Victoria left in the blink of an eye. Sorry. She's always been the type who can't read the room. I see. So this person doesn't scold her himself and blames everything on others? I don't want to be involved with Victoria and her lack of common sense, but I was starting to feel strong distrust towards Eric as well. I might not be able to find happiness even if I marry this person. But I've already told the company about the marriage, and we've gotten married. All that's left is the wedding ceremony. Considering canceling the wedding and getting divorced in this situation, I knew I would be plagued by even more fatigue than now. Plus, with us working at the same company, I'm worried about rumors and such. I can't quit my job for Lauren's sake either. I wondered how things had turned out this way, but I couldn't find an answer. Despite hesitating and feeling lost, I was unable to make a decisive judgment, and the wedding day finally arrived. The wedding, with invited company associates, friends, and relatives from both sides, was a fairly large scale, and I felt a bit heavy-hearted. Victoria was among the invited guests. I felt embarrassed thinking about the other guests witnessing her outrageous behavior. I'm worried. What's wrong? It looks like it'll be a good wedding. I'm looking forward to it. Eric doesn't seem to understand anything. I'm too weary to even explain, so I just smile vaguely. Sure enough, the answer to who was right between me and Eric came out immediately. This is the kind of wedding I'd always dreamed of. It's great. I bet I can take some nice photos. At the wedding venue, Victoria was frolicking about as if she were the star of the show. She seemed busy taking selfies in front of decorations she liked. And her dress was a whitish beige. The long dress with a floral lace motif looked like something you'd wear to a wedding reception. She was acting as if she were the main character. "Oh, Ashley. Your wedding dress is absolutely gorgeous. You look like a different person. White really stands out, it makes you look younger." All the guests, including those invited by Eric, had unpleasant expressions on their faces. "You must be used to it by now, since it's your second time. The venue looks totally amazing." She directed rude words at me, not caring about the atmosphere of the venue or the reactions of those around us. "Are you going to read a letter to your daughter instead of your parents? I didn't know that was a real thing." "That's kind of interesting." Her words and actions were beyond the pale. Her outrageous lack of common sense was shocking even to Lauren, a college student. "Ma'am, please return to your seat. What's the big deal? It's fine for a little bit." "You're disturbing the other guests." Such exchanges had taken place many times since Victoria arrived at the wedding venue. I'm deeply glad we didn't opt for a buffet-style reception. I hate having to scold her over and over, but it would be even more troublesome if I couldn't get her back to her seat and she did as she pleased. I rally myself to endure until this wedding is over. However, an incident occurred that easily shattered my resolve. During the cake cutting, Victoria suddenly stood up from her seat. "Ashley, move. This is my time to shine." "Huh?" Before I knew it, I had been pushed aside by Victoria, and she and Eric were at the center of the venue. Eric was smiling, but the staff, myself, and the other guests were all dumbfounded. "Yes. I've always wanted to do the cake cutting." "Wait a minute. Why is Victoria trying to do it?" To my bewildered self, a smiling Eric says, "This girl has always dreamed of doing the cake cutting. You're my wife, so just put up with it." "Excuse me?" I was already fed up with Victoria's outrageous behavior, but now Eric, who should be on my side, was saying something utterly ridiculous, leaving me at a loss for words. "Hold on a second. The cake cutting? Something that the bride and groom are supposed to do. Why do I have to let someone else do it?" Victoria glares at me. Her dress, close to white, has a design that could pass for a modest wedding dress. It's becoming unclear which one of us is the star of the show. "Ashley, this is your second wedding, right? You're lucky to be wearing a wedding dress at your age, so you could at least let me do the cake cutting." "The cake cutting, at least?" I couldn't ignore her comment about the wedding dress either, but I also couldn't believe she was trying to do the cake cutting. I was rendered speechless. 3 seconds later, for some reason, the wedding venue staff all stood up at once, and one of them spoke up with a frightening expression. "We're terribly sorry, but we must ask you to leave." The invited guests are also glaring coldly at Eric and Victoria. Until a moment ago, I felt like I alone had turned the whole world against me, but it seems I'm not alone. Emboldened by the atmosphere in the venue, I glared at Eric and Victoria. "Why? Eric said it was okay, didn't he?" As Victoria raises her voice, the wedding venue staff fight back without backing down. "This is not your wedding. You're disturbing the other guests." "What's that supposed to mean?" "Eric, we're childhood friends, so why do I have to be treated like this? Say something to them." Put on the spot by Victoria, Eric looks uncomfortable, cowed by the venue's atmosphere. What a pathetic person. In this situation, he doesn't scold Victoria or refuse her. Far from it, he doesn't even have the backbone to firmly stand up for Victoria. The most he does is ask the angry staff in a restrained voice. "I told you during the meeting, right? That I wanted to let Victoria do the cake cutting too." "What's that? I never heard about it." The venue is also abuzz. The staff replies to Eric with a stony expression. "We did hear you out. However, as there is no precedent for such a sequence of events, we informed you that we would also confirm with Ashley, at which point you said you would speak to her, but we never received a response after that. Therefore, we did not plan for such a sequence of events." Of course not. A wedding like that would be a total mess. He didn't run it by me, and he refused to respond to the staff's confirmation, so Eric must have known that. That's why he's being so timid and awkward now. "So you were trying to do the cake cutting with Victoria without telling me?" How far is he going to go in making a fool out of me? As I raise my voice in anger, Eric's shoulders tremble. I told you, didn't I? She's like a little sister to me. When she makes selfish demands, I want to indulge her. Try to understand. I don't understand. I don't want to understand. I was angrier than I had ever been. Eric must realize it too. He's clearly flustered and looks around as if seeking help. But most of the venue is on my side. Everyone is looking at Eric and Victoria with accusing eyes for their outrageous behavior. Unable to bear the heavy atmosphere any longer, Victoria raised her voice while still surrounded by the staff. What's the big deal? The old hag is getting carried away. It's your second wedding, isn't it? You could at least let me do it. Instead of poorly hiding her malice as before, her naked spite and hostility assaulted me in the form of words. Wearing a dress resembling a wedding gown and acting like the star of the show, Victoria doesn't seem to understand why she's being berated. If she wants to be a bride that badly, she should use her own money and find her own partner. If she absolutely must do it with Eric, there are other ways to go about it without doing something like this. The fact that she didn't do that makes her a coward and lacking in common sense. That's enough. Whether it's the first time or the second, no one prepares a wedding for someone else's sake. The one who complained about my retort was Eric. Come on, don't be so stingy. Did he think no one would hear him because he spoke in a low voice? Apparently, not only I, but also the guests seated nearby heard him. A colleague from work frowned in displeasure and glared at Eric. That's the worst. Unbelievable. Faced with criticism brimming with disgust, Eric cowers again. It's getting pathetic. Did I ever say even once that I wanted to have a wedding of my own accord? I prepared it because you insisted on having one no matter what. So this was your goal? Then you should have just married Victoria from the start. Neither childhood friends nor cousins are too closely related to marry. If he wants to get married, he should go ahead and do it. He can do whatever he wants, whether it's the cake cutting or anything else. I had no idea why he was dragging me into this. Calm down, this is embarrassing in front of everyone. My anger swells up again. Which one of us is the embarrassing one? Apparently, I wasn't the only one who thought so. Lauren stands up from her seat among the relatives. You two are the embarrassing ones, not us. Lauren strides up to Eric and grabs his clothes. Her arms are trembling, and I can tell she's furious to the core. She's always been strong-willed and hates underhanded behavior. It's easy to imagine that she can't forgive Victoria and Eric's outrageous conduct. I supported you because you said you would cherish Mom. I'm so disappointed that you would do something like this. How dare you deceive me? I will never forgive you. Then Lauren glared at Victoria as well. How dare you make a fool of Mom to this extent? That dress, your attitude, it's all too outrageous. Excuse me? Don't get cheeky with me. Which one of us is being outrageous? Why do I have to put up with this treatment? It's because Ashley is wearing a wedding dress and getting all excited at her age, doing embarrassing things, that this is happening. Everyone around me was laughing about how embarrassing it is. I didn't strongly desire to have this wedding in the first place. But did someone think of me that way? Is it that embarrassing to wear a wedding dress for the second time after turning 40? I feel anxious wondering if people at work think of me that way too. Seeing my face on the verge of tears, Victoria looked triumphant. However, voices of criticism rise up against Victoria from a different place than Lauren. The number of times and age have nothing to do with it. It was the venue staff who had attended many wedding meetings with me. Everyone is glaring at Victoria, openly expressing their anger. That's right. I was insulted too, but that's not all. Victoria insulted the work of the wedding venue staff to an unimaginable degree. So the staff's anger was truly justified. A wedding is something you hold while being blessed. It's about accepting the celebrations from those around you, being grateful, and deepening your bonds. A wedding is where you make new vows for your future life. That's right. Another staff member spoke up as well. This wedding venue and the schedule all have important meaning. It's not just some party like you say. It's not something so trivial. You're the one who should be ashamed for thinking a wedding is just some fashion show or something. Their rebuttals were a saving grace for me. And as if emboldened by the staff's voices, One guest after another starts voicing their objections. You're being totally outrageous. Hurry up and leave. Why did Eric allow something like this? In addition to work associates, boos can be heard even from Eric's relatives. I don't want to think of him as relatives, it's embarrassing. I feel sorry for Ashley. Faced with the cold stares from the entire venue, Victoria and Eric are driven into a corner. Lauren was still angry, but she calmed down when I stroked her back. Thank you, Lauren, for getting angry for me. Mom, it's not just me. Everyone is angry about how you're being treated. Now it seemed like the whole venue had become my ally. The days of being jerked around by Victoria and Eric feel like a lie. Lauren continued speaking. This is unbelievable. I can't believe my beloved mom is being treated like this. As she spoke, her emotions seemed to rise again, and Lauren finally burst into tears. I hugged Lauren to console her, then turned to face Victoria and Eric again. Making Lauren cry is absolutely unacceptable. I need to reflect on that too. But first, I have to deal with Victoria and Eric, who are the cause of all this. I don't think I can live with you anymore. I'm getting a divorce. Just tell me where to send your belongings. Eric's voice cracks. You're joking, right? We invited people from work to the wedding and everything. That's precisely why I think they'll understand. When I glance at the venue, my boss and colleagues nod in agreement. That's right. I think that's the only option. If things have turned out this way, I'd be more surprised if Ashley said she wouldn't get a divorce. Eric is being driven into a corner. His face has turned pale, and sweat is pouring out of his entire body. The people from work are on my side, which means it could affect his standing at the company, and even his chances of promotion. He was being cornered more than meets the eye. Behind him, Victoria has an awkward expression on her face. She's acting like she has nothing to do with it, but does she think she'll get away unscathed? And Victoria, I'll have you pay for the cost of this wedding that you've ruined. Huh? Why should I have to? The staff restrains Victoria as she tries to approach me. I'm sorry for causing trouble, but I can't let Victoria off the hook. You acted like the star of the show, so that's not going to fly. And Eric, I'll be seeking compensation from you in the divorce trial as well. Why me too? Lauren, who had been crying until then, raised her head. Her tears had already stopped, and her eyes were filled with strong determination. Because you were cheating. The wedding venue has a screen set up to show memorable videos and such. On that screen, a photo of Eric and Victoria walking arm in arm was displayed. Victoria's attitude was so weird that even Mom thought it was unnatural and consulted with me about it. So I looked into it myself. Lauren was very reliable. As someone aspiring to be a lawyer, Lauren and her friends are well-versed in the law, and they know better than me who to turn to in cases like this. You two have been dating for a long time, haven't you? All your friends from college knew about it. They were surprised to hear that Eric was marrying someone else. That's... Eric looked at me. His gaze seemed to be seeking help, but I avoid meeting his eyes and ignore him. No matter what kind of woman he was with or what their relationship was, I no longer felt anything. It was a lot of work to investigate, even with the cooperation of your school friends. But it was worth it. The photos displayed on the screen turn into even more decisive evidence. Photos of Victoria and Eric entering a resort hotel together. Photos of them kissing in a car. The photos shown one after another had, of course, been checked by me in advance. I've entrusted Mom's case to my mentor, a lawyer. Don't think you can run away. The other day, Lauren introduced me to a lawyer who is very skilled in divorce cases. The lawyer seemed to be highly trusted by Lauren's college professor, and when I talked to him, he seemed like a very sincere person, so I felt comfortable leaving it in his hands. I found out about the cheating after the wedding date was set, so I was planning to quietly get a divorce after things settled down. But now that it's come to this, it's just stupid to hide it. I feel like an idiot for being so considerate of our respective positions and reputations. Now that it's come to this, I decided to thoroughly humiliate them. Seeming to realize something from seeing my profile, Eric, who had been pale-faced until now, glares at Victoria with resentment. This happened because you kept doing unnecessary things. What are you going to do about it? It was an angry shout I never could have imagined from the Eric I knew. It's a face I've never seen at work or in private. This must be his true nature. Everyone in the venue is surprised by the drastic change. You're the one who started saying there was a rich woman at work, weren't you? I never said I'd cooperate. This is happening because you're an idiot. It's because you got carried away and kept saying unnecessary things. What an ugly argument. I'm so appalled I can't even speak. At this rate, it seemed like a brawl would break out, so the staff forcibly took Victoria and Eric out of the venue. Everyone, I'm so sorry things turned out this way. After that, I went around apologizing to the guests. Lauren is with me. I felt bad for making her deal with this, but it's reassuring. And all the guests offered kind words to me. The people from work expressed their concern, and Eric's guests in particular were considerate of me, apologizing over and over. I'm cutting ties with those two, and no matter what happens in the future, I have no intention of helping them. Feel free to do as you please until you're satisfied. I'm truly sorry about this. We returned the gifts to everyone, had them eat the meal, and then disbanded. Lauren hugs me as I'm left behind in the wedding venue. Maybe this is my punishment for trying to marry someone other than your dad. That's not true. Being able to break up with someone like that is probably because Dad was protecting you. While hoping that was true, I cried a little. With the fight at the wedding venue, the divorce and claim for compensation in the divorce trial proceeded very smoothly. As I declared, I demanded a settlement and the cost of the wedding from Victoria. Combined with the claim for compensation from Eric in the divorce trial and the expenses during the marriage period, I was told I could definitely get it. Eric apparently quit his job quietly as it became uncomfortable for him at the company, and moved into Victoria's house, but an argument broke out when Victoria got angry at Eric for not working and tried to kick him out. He apparently got rough with Victoria and was arrested by the police. Rumors spread about Victoria too, and she quit her job and disappeared from town. Even so, Lauren apparently can't forgive the two of them and is waiting for a chance to seize their assets. After that, I got tired of romance and spent my days happily with Lauren. Initially, I was worried about my position and rumors at the company, but fortunately, many people knew that Eric had been aggressively pursuing me and that I had reluctantly started dating him. So while people sympathized with me, no one criticized me. Mom, let's go out to eat. Sure, where do you want to go? You know, that restaurant in the neighborhood. The place Dad used to take us. I don't need to fall in love with someone new. Having memories of Lauren's dad is happiness enough. Plus, I have Lauren who cherishes me so much. Okay, let's go, Lauren. Yeah. If these peaceful days can continue, that's good enough. I'm very happy. So, we're thinking of moving everyone over here once the third one's born, Sissy said in her straightforward manner. With the kids growing up, our current apartment is just too cramped. You want the kids to be able to run around freely, right? It's impossible to just move out of the blue. All the rooms are taken. Then, Tim and his family can leave. Tim doesn't have kids, so it should be fine, right? Just move out now. As Tim and I were baffled by her words, a scream from Tim's wife, Emily, filled the air. Sissy's eldest child, Isaac, had shot Emily with a water gun. I hurriedly took the water gun away from Isaac. Why would you do something like this? This lady is a bad person. That's why God is angry and made her unable to have children. Isaac didn't understand why he was being scolded and looked like he was about to cry. What have you been telling your child? It's not true. Emily just can't love children. If she really wanted kids, she wouldn't need fertility treatments to conceive, right? I'm living proof. I love my children, so God has blessed me with them. Meanwhile, Emily has been undergoing fertility treatments for years and still doesn't have any children. Enough. Emily stopped Tim's clenched fist, saying, "It's okay. All right. If Sissy insists that much, I'll leave this house. If you had just agreed from the start. You're nothing but a burden eating away at this house's wealth." After having her say, Sissy left with a satisfied look on her face. My name is Roseanne. I'm a housewife who turned 50 this year. Currently, I live in a two-family home with my husband, Christopher, and my son and his wife, making 4 of us. Tim has always been serious. After graduating from college, he got a job at a major trading company and married Emily, a colleague, when he was 23. Emily was 4 years older than Tim, so my husband and I were a bit surprised when we first heard about their marriage. But Emily was kind-hearted and good at cooking, so I was confident we could trust Tim with her. Tim and I will build a warm family together. I was an only child, so I'd like to have many children if possible. A lively family has always been my dream," Emily said, her eyes shining with hope for the future. However, they struggled to have children. As she approached 30, she became anxious and started fertility treatments with Tim's consultation. Despite not achieving their hoped-for results, Emily never forgot to smile, saying, "The weather is nice today, why don't we all do a barbecue?" and actively tried to build a relationship with us. Moved by her attitude, I felt a desire to protect Emily like my own daughter and encouraged her, "Don't rush your feelings. As long as you keep smiling like that, God will reward you someday." Speaking of kids, I've got another daughter. Tim's got 8 years on her. She was our long-awaited girl, born when I was 30. Her name's Sissy. Since Tim, it had been a while since we had a kid, so maybe that's why my husband and I spoiled her rotten. When Sissy and I went shopping, she'd point at toys on the shelves, saying, "Mom, I want that one. Buy it for me," with those adorable eyes, and I couldn't bring myself to say no, so I ended up buying them more often than not. As a result, Sissy grew up to be quite the little tyrant. After Tim got a job and became a working adult, he said, "Maybe it's time we teach Sissy about the harsh realities of the world, like common sense," with a serious look on his face, and I had to admit, "You're right. What you're saying makes sense." Reflecting on our parenting up until that point, I felt remorse. As Sissy became a high schooler, she started showing more rebellious attitudes towards us and started coming home late. "Do you have any idea what time it is?" I was worried sick. "I didn't ask you to worry about me," she'd retort, sighing as she took off her shoes, mumbling, "Ugh, I hate that teacher," seemingly making enemies of all the adults around her who tried to admonish her. "This is all our fault as parents," I'd fret, watching my daughter's sullen face. Then one day, Sissy, who had been playing games in her room, suddenly rushed out and ran into the bathroom. I thought she might be feeling sick, but I quickly realized that wasn't it. "Could it be that you're? What's it to you? It's none of your business." That was the first time I realized my daughter was pregnant. "You're still underage. You need to think more seriously about your life," Tim lectured Sissy, but it was too late since there was already a baby on the way. And as soon as Sissy graduated high school, she ran off with Sullivan, a young favorite from a nightclub, as if eloping. "That girl, she's only 18. Can she really manage carrying a child into the future?" When I voiced my worries, my husband Christopher, though worried about Sissy at heart, said, "Let her be. She's nothing but trouble," trying to sound indifferent. My fears were confirmed when Sissy, after having her first child, would come home saying, "Mom, I'm really struggling this month. Can you lend me $1,000? Asking for money. Sissy's husband, Sullivan, used to be the top earner at the club, but once the regulars heard he was married with a kid, his popularity cooled off, and his sales plummeted. All these women, not even my girlfriends, complaining all the time. Got me fired, thanks to them. what a nuisance," he said, seemingly unbothered by his unemployment, laughing it off as if it were a joke. "Sullivan, what kind of work are you doing now?" Even when Christopher, acting as Sissy's dad, pressed him, Sullivan just laughed. "I'm looking for all sorts of jobs, but can't seem to find one that suits my charm." "Maybe it's the environment? Care and food service aren't really for me." "Don't blame the environment. You're a dad now. How do you plan to support your family? It's not the time to be picky about jobs." I couldn't help but get irritated by Sullivan's lackadaisical attitude and all talk, no action stance. When Tim chimed in, Sissy, already pregnant with their second child, snapped back, "That's lame, Tim. Being a boring salaryman like Tim is just too dull, right? Sullivan has dreams, unlike Tim, so don't make him do any boring job anyone can do." "What's so boring about it? I'm just doing my best with what I can. It's with the salary I earn that we can support our family. Don't mock those who work hard for a living." Sissy mocking Tim, the salaryman, wasn't new. When Tim landed his job, Sissy, just starting middle school, said, "Being a salaryman is so lame. Can't even brag about it to friends," genuinely sighing in dismay. "So, what job would you have preferred?" "A musician, an idol, an influencer." "Oh, but with Tim, none of those are an option. Average looking and hopeless in life, Tim." Sissy made a comment that implied Tim was worthless. Years passed, but Sissy's mentality remained childlike. "It seems we significantly misjudged how to raise our daughter." In front of a pregnant Sissy, Tim, shaking with anger, could only suppress his fury by hitting his own thigh. After Sissy had her energetic second child, she started mocking not only Tim but also his wife, Emily. "Did you start fertility treatments? Because I got pregnant with my second, did that make you panic? It's so funny. Aren't you over 30 now? Isn't it too late for you? Hey, Sissy. There are things that are okay to say and things that are not. That was way too harsh on Emily. Apologize to her." Despite Tim's outrage, Sissy, without any remorse, flaunted her second child to Emily, saying, "Look, the sad aunt who can't have kids." As the child started crying, Sissy mockingly comforted it, there, the aunt scared you, didn't she?" while Emily, trying to hold back tears, looked away. When Emily, feeling unbearable, stood up to leave the room, Sissy stopped her. "Emily, how much have you actually spent on fertility treatments? If you have that much money, wouldn't it be better spent on my children? It's such a bother, women who can't have children." "Stop it, Sissy. Emily, you don't have to listen to her," Tim intervened. "It's because Tim always coddles you that you haven't been able to have children. You better hurry up before you get too old." Emily cried quietly in another room, but I felt that any words from me would only pressure her more, so I couldn't bring myself to say anything. Listening to children's laughter should cheer you up, right, Mom? If only Emily could give you grandchildren, you wouldn't have anything to worry about. What a useless wife you got. Saying so, Sissy attempted to make me hold her baby right in front of Emily, who was watching. "Then next month, I'll be counting on you for money again, Mom," she said, as if it was the most natural thing, taking with her an envelope containing $1,000. A year later, Emily's smile had gradually disappeared. I invited her to meals numerous times, hoping to see her bright smile again, but every time we saw a family with children at the restaurant, she sighed. Each time, I felt sorry, regretting that my good intentions had backfired. One day, Sissy visited us as usual. "I have some really happy news for everyone today. What is it? Did Sullivan finally find a job? I asked, hoping slightly. No, it's not about that, Sissy said with a beaming smile, making a big deal out of it. In fact, I'm pregnant with a third child. Mom, you're going to have a third grandchild soon. Isn't that great, Mom? Having a daughter who's given you 3 energetic grandchildren. Sissy laughed triumphantly, glancing at Emily, who looked down. But before that, I've asked numerous times, has Sullivan found a job? Oh, come on. That doesn't matter right now. Praise me more for being pregnant with the third child. You're happy about it too, right, Mom? Worried about Emily's feelings, I couldn't genuinely rejoice over Sissy's pregnancy. Lost for words, I remained silent, and Christopher took over. How can you say earning a living doesn't matter? How are you going to live, having 3 children without working? This is unfair to the children being born. Christopher, of course, wasn't blaming the addition of another grandchild. The problem was that the father of the upcoming child had no intention of working. Whenever Sullivan visited with Sissy and the topic of work came up, he'd hastily excuse himself, saying, "I'm going out to buy cigarettes," and escape. Seeing this, my spouse and I would exchange looks and sigh, realizing he was still unemployed. So, we're thinking of moving here once the third child is born. Sissy spoke in such a casual tone that I almost missed it. Wait a minute. Move in here? Of course, where else would we move? This house is like my parental home, so there's no problem if we move in, right? Indeed, our family moved into this house when Tim and his wife got married, living together as a 2-family household. But this wasn't the home where Sissy was born. Besides, with 3 kids growing up, our current apartment will be too cramped. Kids need to run around and have fun, right? What do you think? It's impossible just to spring that on us. No matter how big the house is, all the rooms are occupied by the 4 of us living here, including Tim and his wife. There's no room for you to move in. It may sound cold, but it's the reality. I thought this would make Sissy give up and leave, but she glared at Emily menacingly and said, then, Tim and his family should just move out. Tim has a stable job and a salary, right? That should be enough for him. And since Tim doesn't have children, it's perfect, isn't it? There's no reason for him to cling to this house, so he and Emily should leave right now. As we were bewildered by Sissy's unreasonable demand, stop it. That's cold, stop. Suddenly, Emily's scream echoed. Sissy's eldest child, Isaac, had squirted water at Emily with a water gun. I hurriedly took the water gun from Isaac's hand. Why would you do such a thing? You must apologize if you've done something wrong. But Mom said this auntie is a bad person. That's why God is angry and made her unable to have children. Isaac genuinely believed it and couldn't understand why he was being scolded, his face on the verge of tears. I glared at Sissy, Isaac's mother, and said, "What have you been telling your child?" Well, it's the truth. Emily probably can't love children. If you really wish for children, you don't need to spend a lot of money on fertility treatments. Children are naturally conceived, right? I'm the proof. I love my children. That's why God is watching over me and blessed me with children. Unlike Emily, who's been wasting money on fertility treatments for years without any results. Do you see any children around her? Enough already. Teaching your child baseless, unscientific things and letting him harass others is wrong, even for a mother. Tim finally raised his voice, but far from being remorseful, Sissy retorted with a sneer, It doesn't hurt or itch me what a childless Tim says. And maybe the reason Emily can't have children is partly due to Tim? Emily, with her fists clenched, desperately stopped Tim. It's okay. If Sissy insists so much, I'll leave this house. Contrary to the tearfully biting her lip Emily, Sissy smirked triumphantly. If you had been honest from the start, it would have been better. You're just a nuisance, eating away at the house's wealth, and left with a satisfied look after throwing insults at Emily until the very end. The house went quiet once Sissy and her family left. So, we've decided to leave. Thank you for everything, Tim said, bidding us goodbye. We need to decide where to live and prepare. As Tim and Emily got up to go to their room, I stopped them. Wait. We're coming with you. What? I can't forgive Sissy's terrible behavior either. So, we're also leaving this house. Looking at Christopher sitting next to me, he nodded firmly. I'm of the same mind. A month passed. Opening the bedroom curtains, I could see a vast vegetable garden through the window. Opening the window to let in the fresh air, I felt wrapped in a mysteriously gentle sensation, as if both my body and soul were being soothed. While not all the fields in view were ours, a local farmer had lent us a section for our family. Almost every day, someone from the neighborhood would leave vegetables they'd grown at our doorstep without a word. Roseanne, look! We got such a big cabbage! Emily exclaimed, her eyes shining like an innocent girl. Emily, who had been devastatingly upset the night Sissy demanded they leave, seemed to have regained some peace over the past month. Sometimes, watching the neighborhood children run around, Emily would smile wistfully, and I felt a tightness in my chest, knowing nothing I could say would help right now. There's a festival in the neighborhood next month. I'll try to help out with the preparations if I have time. Where's Dad? Christopher went to greet the chairman of the pest control group. There are a lot of boars around here, so Christopher wants to contribute to the local community. Our lives have completely changed since moving here, surrounded by rich nature, feeling refreshed in both body and soul compared to before. Tim, now allowed to work remotely, has set up a home office and is dedicated to his work. Though moving from the city to an unfamiliar countryside life has its inconveniences, being freed from the daily commute, Tim smiles peacefully. This place is heaven. My mobile phone rang, and when I looked at the screen, it was Sissy's name. Oh, it's been a month. How are you feeling? I asked as a mother concerned about her pregnant daughter's health, but on the other end of the line, Sissy was far from calm, yelling, "What's going on?" When I went to pack up and visit the family home today, there was a vacant sign in front of the house. You know something, right? Explain this to me. It's exactly as you saw. The house is currently vacant. If the sign is still there, it means no one has moved in yet, doesn't it? Why? Knowing we were going to move, is this some kind of harassment? It's not harassment. You were the one who told Emily to leave that house. I did say that, but that doesn't mean you all had to leave too, right? Where are you now? Where am I? I'm at my own home, of course. So, your own home isn't this house where I am now? What's going on? I decided to briefly explain the situation up to this point. A month after Sissy made the unreasonable demand for Emily to leave the house, I moved to a new home with Tim and his wife. The home was previously occupied by elderly relatives who are now in a facility, allowing us to rent it. When we were looking for a new place to live and asked around, Christopher's cousin mentioned a vacant house. I just wanted Tim and his family to leave. But why did you all have to leave as well? Do you dislike me that much? Is that woman who can't have children so important? We couldn't forgive your words. There was silence on the other end of the call. You mocked Emily, who is trying hard with fertility treatments, but you too were born thanks to fertility treatment. What? I got married at 20 and had Tim at 22. Despite the fear surrounding my first childbirth, fortunately, Tim was born without any issues and grew up healthy. When Tim started kindergarten and I began to feel a bit more relaxed about parenting, I started thinking about having a second child. The trigger was Tim seeing a friend's younger sister and saying, "I want a brother or sister too." Christopher and I thought it would be nice to have another child since two would make things more lively, and at 27, I thought I still had plenty of time to have and raise another child. However, despite our efforts, getting pregnant again didn't happen as quickly as we hoped, and we started to feel a bit anxious, so we consulted with an obstetrician who suggested fertility treatments. We followed the doctor's advice and adjusted our lifestyle, but despite our efforts, there were no signs of pregnancy, and I began to feel desperate as I approached 30. When I visited the clinic for a checkup, I saw a woman with a swollen belly, a young boy cuddling up to her, talking to the baby about to be born. While I found it heartwarming, I couldn't help but think, why not me, as my thoughts inevitably drifted to a darker place. Christopher tried to reassure me, "Don't worry so much. But if we keep waiting, it'll only get harder to have children." Christopher never snapped back at me. Instead, he would smile quietly and hug me gently. On my 30th birthday, feeling something was off, I rushed to the bathroom and found a positive result on a pregnancy test, leading us to the hospital. "Congratulations, you're pregnant." That year, we were blessed with you. Thank you. I'm so glad to finally meet you, Sissy. Sissy, I'm your big brother. Let's get along. I was truly happy when you were born. Not just me, but Christopher and Tim, we all celebrated your arrival. Yet, you said such terrible things to Emily, who's struggling with fertility treatments. I just couldn't forgive you. I'm sorry, Mom. I didn't know I was born through fertility treatments. I'll change and reflect. Please forgive me. Can we come back? That's impossible. We've already left that house, and it wasn't ours to begin with. What do you mean it wasn't ours? That house was rented to us at a low cost by Emily's dad for our sake. You might not have known, but we paid rent every month. I wasn't told about this. What are we going to do now? We've already given up our apartment. We have nowhere to live. There's a place right in front of you. It's vacant, so that's fortunate for you, Sissy. All right, I'll live in this house. But a month later, the rent is too high. Isn't there something wrong with this house? Is that so? We had a special deal because of Emily, but the actual rent is usually high. It has a large backyard suitable for barbecues, you know? Don't talk like it's someone else's problem. You know, right, Mom? Sullivan has no income. How can we afford such high rent, not even for a month? That's your problem, isn't it? I can't do anything about it. Can't you lend me just the money for the rent? You do think of me as your dear daughter, right? It's impossible. Do you have any idea how much money we've lent you already? Because of you, we've lost our savings for retirement. Even if we had the money, we wouldn't lend it to you. Somehow, Sissy found out where Emily was receiving her medical treatments and ambushed her at the clinic. You figured out this place pretty well, didn't you? It was easy to find out. In a place like this, there's only one clinic. But Emily, please, I'm begging you. Ask your dad to reduce our rent. There's no need for that. This person is a stranger to us now. I won't ask my dad either. We refuse your request, Sissy. Then you'll at least take care of the kids, right? They are your dear grandchildren. It's going to be tough with the new baby coming, and it would really help if you could look after them. No matter what you say, I have no intention of helping you anymore. Let's go, Emily. Later, I heard rumors about Sullivan not even trying to find a job and their two restless children, crying and scattering food around. Surrounded by her family, Sissy gave birth to her third child. A few months later, frustrated, Emily's dad evicted the Sissy family for not paying rent. Curious about how they were settling into their new public housing, I sometimes went to check on them. I'm tired from job hunting, Sullivan would shout. You're just playing around with no money, Sissy retorted as neighbors stepped outside, sighing at yet another scene. Returning home, the smell of stew from the kitchen whet my appetite. Emily, noticing my return, ran over. You seem to be glowing today, Emily. Did something good happen? Actually, I'll announce it at dinner. When dinner time came, Christopher and Tim gathered in the dining room. Seeing Emily smiling more brightly than usual made everyone else naturally start smiling too. I have something to tell you. I'm finally pregnant. Congratulations, Emily. Christopher, silent, covered his face with his hands, his shoulders shaking. Come on, you're going to be a dad. And you, Mom, your face is all tear-streaked. What a wonderful night it was. Imagining our life as a family of 5, I couldn't stop my tears and smiles.